until we get facts, until we have, as Secretary of the Army McHugh noted, a review of all the circumstances, it's not in the interest of anyone, and certainly I think a bit unfair to Sergeant Bergdahl's family and to him to presume anything.
Saying that he served with honor and distinction, honor and dignity, I mean, that's the exact opposite of what happened. And that's a slap in the face to everybody who honorably joined the Army, deployed, returned home, or deployed and died in combat. Saying that Bergdahl was honorable is the exact opposite. He's no hero. I mean, he's a deserter.
Well, the controversy over Bo Bergdahl and that Taliban transfer continues to grow. Some new Fox News polls out just today. First, concerned talks with terrorists will lead to more U.S. soldiers hostages. Very concerned, 57%, and you see the breakdown after that. And then the U.S. releasing 5 Taliban prisoners in exchange for return of U.S. soldier. And this is interesting, the breakdown very close. Approve 45%, disapprove 47%. We start there tonight. Let's bring our panel in from Washington, D.C. Syndicated columnist George Will, Charles Lane, opinion writer for the Washington Post, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer.
And joining us from Chicago, our host and anchor, Bret Baier, author of the newly released Special Heart, a wonderful, heartwarming account of a family struggle against congenital heart disease, namely his family, already released yesterday, but already number 2 on Barnes & Noble, number 17 on Amazon. The perfect Father's Day gift right after the show. Maybe after Greta, go out and get it.
I tell you, it just doesn't feel the same when you do it, Charles, but thank you very much. It feels a little awkward. Let me start with this controversy. It continues to grow. George, where are we with this, and how big is this potentially?
It's going to be huge, and the numbers you just cited are going to move, I think, fast and adversely to the president. Because this, again, it's all the scandals or debacles, call them what you will, that reinforce a pre-existing adverse narrative are the most long-lived and ruinous. This plays to the image of the administration as the gang that can't shoot straight, the gang that will not talk straight about its inability to shoot, and damages the Constitution in the process. Because at the bottom of all this, Bret, is the question of whether the president had the power to do this in the first place. Leave aside the wisdom of what he did. The president's position is that he had the power because he gave it to himself in a signing statement on an appropriations bill. For viewers who don't know what that means, presidents, not just Barack Obama, George Bush did it 1,200 times, on various provisions of 172 bills. When signing the bill, they attach a statement either interpreting particular clauses or, and in this case, foreshadowing the non-enforcement and the non-compliance with certain clauses. In this case, the president was obligated by law to notify Congress 30 days before any such exchange, and he did not do it.
Chuck, how much does this release of this video from Taliban complicate this for the administration, or does it?
I don't think the video makes a whole lot of difference, except on one point, which is this issue of the health of Bo Bergdahl, which they have asserted that one reason they couldn't inform Congress ahead of time is that he was in such bad shape that they were worried about any further delay or leak of this operation. And, you know, I'm no doctor and I can't tell for sure, but he didn't look like he was near death in this particular video. That I think damaged their narrative on that point. I think as a general proposition, that is just another case in what is generally so amazing about this whole story, which is the difference between how the administration thought this story was going to play. They clearly thought it was going to be a feel-good, triumphant moment, and how it has actually played, which is anything but that.
Yeah, Charles, that disconnect is really something. If you look at the president's trip in Europe, it's not even really getting covered because everyone is focused on this prisoner swap.
Well, that disconnect is quite shocking. Assume that this had been somebody who had served honorably, It would still be a very difficult decision to release the 5 commanders in return, but I think people would say, tough call, but okay. But given the fact that there are all these questions about him being a deserter, the fact that they are not insisting that he must be looked at, perhaps tried, or at least some investigation launched. Somebody in the military actually said he's suffered enough. Secretary Hagel says, well, let's not be unfair. The only way you can begin to justify this is to say we had an obligation to get him out, but now we have an obligation to make sure that if he did what his soldiers around him unanimously said he did, deserted, he needs to be at the receiving end of military justice. But they have such a tin ear here with Ambassador Rice, National Security Advisor Rice, saying he served honorably, which is obviously untrue, with them talking about his health, which appears to be untrue, and not insisting on the fact that they have to treat him and to deal with what he did, which apparently endangered other soldiers, in a way that is firm and consistent with military justice.
Charles, how do you explain the 45% who say this deal should have gone forward, and the pushback from the administration that bring them home first and then deal with what happened?
Look, had the choice been mine, I would have made that same choice. It's a difficult decision, and I would not attack those who would have done otherwise. But if you are going to do something like that, and you know that you're exposing the country to risk, these are dangerous militants, but we have long engaged, and all other countries in the West have engaged in hostage swaps where the West always comes out on the short end, and the reason is that we put a value on individual human life the way that the barbarians at the other end of the table don't, and that's why we always end up with unequal swaps. The best example is the Israelis, who gave up 1,000 terrorists in return for 1 sergeant.
Yeah, we're going to try to get more on this topic because there's a lot to talk about. There's several elements to this story, so we'll stay on this topic with the panel when we come back after this short break.